All right, so here we are, the end of the day today. We started out the day, we were supposed to go into cross-examination of Alex Ellis. He apparently checked into the urgent care and was unavailable. So we cannot cross-examine him, and it looks like we'll be waiting until Monday to get to cross-examination with him. So then we go into Terry Petrie. He's an attorney with the ENR. He handles environmental litigation. This has been a really boring day. We've had jurors falling asleep. First guy goes through all the litigation, and they bring up all the court orders, the 1998 court order, multiple court orders. I'm not going to go into that. It's totally boring. So some of the jury questions. Why was there such a large gap in time between court orders? Now, once again, here we have a lawyer in the courtroom explaining things to the jury. This guy, he says he glimpsed some concern from the government, believing they could successfully remove the cattle. Government in 2011 took interest in the Bundy cattle and land again. So, and that's a shorter version of his long rambling on that's trying to make people ignore. Did Bundy continue filing from 99 to 2012? The answer was yes. Were the legal proceedings between Cliven and the government? Yes. The next jury question, does the U.S. government ever allow grazing rights on U.S. land? The answer is yes. Did the land that Cliven's cattle were on permit grazing? The land that the Bunkerville allotment has been removed from grazing purposes. That was huge. That was brought out by the jury, saying that initially Cliven had the rights to that land, but if he was to pay all of his bills like they're saying, he wouldn't be able to graze on it anyways because they've closed it down. The next one, check was sent to the wrong department. Meaning they talked about the check that was sent to the county, and he said, couldn't it have been sent to the correct department? The guy said yes. Then the judge said, could the BLM have cashed a check to Clark County? And that was no. So she interrupted that, because she didn't like the answer to that question. Does an order to Bundy apply to Cliven only or his sons as well? He didn't really know how to answer that. The other question, how does BLM know all the cattle belong to Mr. Bundy? The brand. Are the allotments defined by fences or are they open range? What transpired between 1998 and 2013 to reactivate the government's action on removing Cliven's cattle from the land? He couldn't really answer that either. A lot of roundabout answers of things he doesn't even have the answer to. This is a concerning question. Why would the defendants want to get involved with people who are breaking the law and the cattle and grazing cattle in that area? He couldn't answer that. Next one was Stephen's lawyer's question, mean the court order did not apply to Stephen Stewart. I believe the answer was yes. If he had paid the fees, would the cattle have not been trespassed? I don't know that they answered that one. Tanasi went back and asked in 2011 what was the event that re-triggered the government's interest in cattle's land and the removing the cattle, and so he couldn't answer that. The next one, all court orders affect during appeals. The judge will answer this question, and she says yes, unless there is a stay put forth. A stay is like a pause button. So even though he's got court orders and he's appealing them for all those times, it doesn't matter because it still doesn't go to it. So the next we have Gus War. He is a BLM. He works for the BLM, but he is not a law enforcement, is the way he's putting this. This gentleman is a wild horse and burro specialist. He is constantly involved in bringing the horses and the burros together, and we all know how they treat those animals. So he was in charge of hiring the people, the contractors to do the cattle, and he was in charge of the impoundment, the gather at the impoundment. Talks a lot about the brand inspections being done, and that as soon as that's done, the cows belong to the federal government. That he was in charge and care of them and until they were sold at the stock house. He entered pictures of cattle in the pens with tags that are glued on them, showing that after the brand inspection, they now belong to the federal government. He talked about how they had decided to cease operations on the 11th, but that just meant that to get the new cattle, and that he had sent all the other civilians home in his group, and then he was to stay there to take care of the cattle until they were sold. That he had hay arrive so that he could take care of them the entire time. He said on the 12th he had binoculars and he could see groups of individuals gathering at the road around him and the other civilians. He said, we were civilians huddled in a trailer. They got a call that they had to huddle in a trailer. He had radio correspondence and could hear what was going on. He claims protesters were on the ridge north of the I-15 on the ridges to the east and the west of the ICP. We all know from trial last time those were actual snipers, BLM, and Park Service snipers, not protesters. But this gentleman from inside the trailer, he was in fear for his life, and he was in fear and told that that's exactly what it was. Tanasi gets up and says, on April 11th, did you order the helicopter to shut down at 10:30 a.m. on the 11th to cease the impound operation? He said yes. He asked about the threat level increase on the morning of the 11th, that he sent the crew home, but nothing occurred. On the morning of the 12th, you testified you saw people gathering, and he was the only civilian, but he said him and a group of civilians. Okay, so back to the jury questions. What happened to the non-Bundy branded cattle? They were still on site with the rest of the cattle, but in a different pen. What was your chain of command? He reports to a law enforcement person, so he's not, once again, he's not going to say Dan Love, but he pretty much says he reports to Dan Love. What was the basis of your concern on the 12th? He said the Wild West is gone and he had weapons. So he said the people had guns, but I think one of the jury questions were that all cowboys carry guns, so what's the problem with that? And his answer was the Wild West is long gone and he was the only civilian that had weapons and everyone came around him. Would Bundy have received any money from the sale of the cattle? The answer was no. Did you receive any verbal or written threats? He tried to go into a long narrative here about how other people possibly, and then it was said no, he said no. How are the boundaries written between public and NPS and private lands? They went through a long discussion about this, about laws. Then it was also restated whether there's fences or not. He said we had maps on our phones. You stated several times that you were evacuated out of the north and were in fear of your life and scared at different times. He went through this, said he was in fear of his life. The two-part, since the cattle were released from the pens, does the government consider them stolen? The judge said she'll answer that at the end of the trial during when she talks about the law. When the cattle are transported, do they have to have a number? Yes, that he goes through the brand instructions again. Tanasi gets back up for recross. On the 12th, you said you had no fear and were scared and you didn't want to get into a gunfight. You were interviewed by Kent Clayman, and in that interview, you did not tell him. This was objected to because it wasn't his actual report. It was someone that did an interview with him and reported on, so we couldn't use it to perjure him because he did not speak of his fear during that time. He had 3 visits with the FBI, 3 visits with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Then we bring in Special Agent Earl McEwen. He was the gentleman that was operating the camera inside the plane. This I have a lot of issues with. You know, he was the first witness last trial. They have cut up and are skipping around. They're not going to play the whole boring thing. It doesn't matter. Jury members are still falling asleep. We had another juror fall asleep today and had to go out, and the judge said she was going to let him raise her hands, possibly take more breaks. Then the judge herself in court, you know, I've been having a problem with this bowl of candy. This bowl of candy that showed up as soon as we started doing sidebars, and that was being negative. So Today, the judge says she was complaining that the jury was taking candy as they were leaving just to us in the courtroom. And so when the jury comes back, she said, well, I put the bowl of candy there to help with people falling asleep. So when you come in, feel free to take a piece of candy. Just don't grab candy on the way out, so it diminishes the effect. She said, oh, maybe we can train you to get excited to be here. Maybe we could train you to be excited to be here. What in the hell is going on here? The judge just said she's trying to train the jury. She is working on the jury. Do you know what else happened today? All the jury members are wearing green. Were they given a memo that somebody else wasn't given? What is going on here? I believe that there is jury tampering going on from the judge herself. And the court, there is something going on here. I don't see how almost 12 people, there was maybe 3 people that didn't have green on. You know, some people had green skirt, you know, everyone was green shirts, green things, you know. So what's going on? And the other thing is we've got barely any people left in the courtroom. I think, you know, we did have a lovely couple, we had a lovely group come down. They were coming back from their vacation and decided to stop and say hi, and I truly appreciate it. They were coming from California on their way to Arizona. We had a great talk. You know, the more I do this and the more I get into this, the more I hear of other people that have been railroaded by this exact same system that's doing this. I talked about how inside they're not letting us have our defense. She talked about she had family litigations where she was going to testify. The person was not guilty, and she could prove that, and she was going to testify, but they went to the family member and said, if she goes in and testifies, we're going to prosecute her and make sure she serves 5 years. And so then they cut off all communications between the prisoner and family, and she wasn't able to help that person. This is the kind of issues that we have with our federal system, when there's no checks and balances, where they can go unchecked. What I would like to see is, I'd like to see someone get in here and figure out if it's legal that they can just train the jury to like to be there with candy. Are we children? If they can give out flyers and say, hey, everyone should wear green today because it causes camaraderie, right? That's what it's about. It's not about making sure the jury votes one way or the other. It's about camaraderie, right? So the only other thing is this special agent, Earl McEwen, we didn't get into cross-examination. They cut all of his videos, all of his aerial photos up like crazy. And in this one, he actually says that he sees a person lying prone facing the north direction. 2 times does he circle areas where you can see on the bridge. At the time and last time, he did not mention that at all. I'm sure it's not in his report. It's something that he found after the fact and is throwing in here. The first couple times that they were saying it, you couldn't even see it on the screen. The last time they pointed out, you could barely tell at all. So I would like to know is, I hope these people can sleep at night with what they're doing. And I'd like you to know that your federal government is not out here to help you or support you. They are out here to help big corporations like CCA and the other corporations that want the land and want to make money off the people, and that's what they're here for. I wouldn't be surprised if the judge upstairs is getting a hefty little check, a hefty little bonus from all of this. So that's pretty much all I have today. We'll maybe I know a lot of people are packing up right now, but maybe we'll see, kind of do a sweep. What did you think about today in court? Hello.
It was like an ant farm. That's what we watched, an ant farm. It was, you couldn't tell who anybody was. I don't know if they're trying to imply that the 3 on the bridge were maybe Eric and Ricky and Steven. You can't see anything. It looks like you're just watching a giant ant farm. And like Andrea said, we have our trick-or-treat bowl up there, so the jurors can be happy with their trick-or-treat bowl. That's about it.
Over here we have the lovely ladies helping David pack up. David travels over an hour every day to get here to bring everything. And I'm so appreciative of him and the people that help him get out of here every day. I can tell you that the ant farm thing last time, I want to say it lasted 2 days the last time. This time it was not even half a day. So that's how cut up it is. I hope the lawyers are able to bring more of it in because there was good stuff. You know what else they cut out? They cut out the park service. They cut out all those vehicles. The only time they showed the BLM in those vehicles is when there was only 3 left right before they backed out. So they are really trying to create a narrative here, and they're getting away with it. What are we going to do about it, America? Remember, if we don't stand together, we shall surely hang separately.